Now I take you to a time of the last adventure in the battle against the forces of Samael, the Shadow Master and father of the face-shifting demons, who rose up against heaven in the first war against heaven. For many years, there have been many that have questioned, how could an angel such as Lucifer rise up and strike his own creator? How could this be possible? Let me tell you this, my friends, and know this to be true, because I am sitting here before you, telling you this tale, is because by the time that war began, I, Lucifer as an angel, was long dead by then. You all sense there is something wrong with that story. I agree with you. There very much so is. For it was Samael, duplicate shadow, twins created from magic by fools who knew not the powers they were playing with. Fools who dwell in this very age among us as we speak. So gather close, as I dare not utter their names too loudly, for it would be most likely my last tale I ever told, if the puppet masters behind Samael's creation knew I spoke their names. They are the enemies of the Druids, known as the Nine Ancient Ones. They transcend time and space, and seek the destruction of all things, but we are here to focus on Samael. Let us not lose focus.
Where am I?
You don't know where you are?
No, I don't.
You're in Strangeland.
Strangeland.
Yeah, Strangeland.
Wow, how did I get here?
Well, that's simple, Mr. Yates.
What do you mean?
You're the creator?
A third if the stars are falling from heaven, another sign of the terrible times ahead. I have waited to tell of this tale to give the Almighty time to adjust himself to what had transpired, so now let me try to explain. If you've noticed here lately, where we have had centuries of silence and those in need of God's divine intervention but have been met with unanswered prayers have suddenly gone to there being someone on the other end actually helping, that seems like it is actually God himself re-emerging from wherever he has been. That is because he has been stuck in a formless void of non-existence, or the intangible presence of God has been jammed in for the past 2,000 years. God's back from the edge of existence where the fallen ones had cast him into after they plotted against his spiritual transcendence when he died as Christ. Let me explain the principles of the eternal cycle of life to enlighten you to understand this properly. In the spiritual realm, in which your time spent in spiritual form is decided by your deeds and the memories of those you knew and lives you impacted. Now, if you're a heavily sinful person, then the massive impacts your life caused can keep you in a suspended spiritual state of suffering, which is the binding of the infernal chains that will hold you within my dominion if you go to hell when you die. Hell is not eternal, but it can be if you're arrogant enough. But the Creator's will for all in creation is to exist in an eternal state of symbiotic equilibrium with each other without the hierarchy of good, bad and worse. The memories of the living can draw the spiritual residual energy of the soul that detaches from the body when it dies, back into the realm of the living. When the body dies, the soul shifts its energy resonance as it passes through the physical barrier of the body that no longer has anything to attach its luminokinetic electric pattern, and becomes the spirit, which is a sentient being held together by residual will and running electrical current patterns in a loop, and then set by the mind's last mental image of what that shape will look like that will serve as the new outer barrier, or body. While in spiritual form, the lifespan of that spiritual body is held by two principal pillars of metaphysical laws, to maintain its composure and sustainable energy. The first is that which can tie a spirit to the physical world because of overwhelming emotional feelings. then that object causes the spirit to remember, for the memories of one's life can still be found on the spiritual energy, for it was once the neuroelectric energy that coursed through your brain when you had a body, and the memories of the living who knew you well enough, or if your deeds were so widely known that you left an impression on someone's memories detailed enough to remember even the vibe or energy of your presence in a room that could be felt. Then that memory of the presence can call the residual spirit's energy back from across even the void of the spiritual realm, which lay in another dimension coexisting alongside ours. These two factors decide how long one remains within the spiritual form. Once all earthly ties have been settled and resolved, then the spiritual form can let go of the physical world and fully transcend across the luminescence field barrier and into the next dimension, which is called eternity. Eternity is not heaven, that is the ascending transition after eternity that can only be described as the place of total emotional bliss, free of all and anyone confining turmoil. Eternity is basically the physical realm from beginning to the end of all that is, was, and shall be. There the spiritual energy is recycled and rejuvenated by stripping it down of all fused energies that comprised its entire state until it is just the raw particle forces from which it came. Then it is refused with all new particle energy and the cycle begins again. Once that energy builds up enough of a discharge as the astral form, or one's soul, then they reincarnate back into another physical form, but when that form becomes a living human being is uncertain, for in eternity time is not a principal law of reality but a visually tangible concept that can be interacted with. Now that is understood, I can explain what happened and why no one has felt the presence of the true Creator in so long unless they underwent this process to reach Him. The trick that the fallen ones played on God was that they set a path before Him that He could not refuse, as the sinless life of Jesus Christ. His sinless life's achievements of living without emotional impression, combined by the recorded distraction left upon those who knew Him, left them unable to record any true statement of the true Jesus's life, which caused his spiritual form to become weakened so as the spiritual energy began to lose integrity, unable to maintain composure for very long. The fallen ones took advantage of this and cast the residual energy of the Creator's Spirit out into the edges of creation where existence was still forming. There he lingered for 2,000 years as the intangible being of God, whose presence was so great if he stepped into creation his presence would destroy creation because of its sheer magnitude. Notice the cynical tone here. Only here recently did I, with the help of others I shall not name, bring the true Creator back from the primordial void by projecting my energies into a secondary pre-spiritual form that is still connected and controlled by the physical body's will, and cast it into the void of non-linear particle mass that is outside the boundaries of existence. By searching for the fundamental raw energies that were fused into Jesus's physical body and retrieved those energies back from across the void beyond existence, much like spiritual bungee jumping in comparison with my compatriots waiting to pull my energies back across the threshold and into existence with God in tow. Once I locked on to his energy, we used the Ark of the Covenant to call the Creator's presence to re-centralize itself through the call of the Arkansas, and so thus, as was foretold, seemingly in mockery, God has returned. But the cynical proverb of wisdom is actually the forewarning of a trap that was triggered, and that trap is the conflict of the fallen one's alternative plan, which is the apocalypse, which translates it meaning to be the destruction of all things, the destruction of existence. But this is such a profound revelation, why am I speaking of it here on this video and not proclaiming it to the world like a stark raving lunatic? For that reason exactly. In fact, I've noticed by the way that Moses, Enoch, Abraham, all those from the biblical era that were entitled with speaking to or about God to the masses of the world, each and every one of them came off, if you didn't know better, as seeming like oh so slightly crazy people. So unless you, my viewers, are sitting there with a split-minded opinion that says, by logical reasoning most of what he is saying is possible, though it sounds far into left field as far as possibilities go, to be true. However, if by conditioned, socially acceptable, beliefs in reality, your mental take on this is, this guy is a straight out to lunch, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, loony. Unless you are left feeling split between those two factors, then I have not portrayed this information correctly and should try and revamp this tale and figure out what I missed or left out. I shall tell you this one thing. It is the one thing that just may actually fear. That is what would happen if the Creator finally got tired of trying to adhere to that which we believe Him to be as we understand Him for the sake of our faith in Him and not in something that He knows will lead to the destruction of everything He has worked for, and loses His self-control to where we see exactly what the Creator could do if He lost His patience. He's the Creator. He doesn't have to be anything that He doesn't choose to be. These manipulative little bastarded children of my holy loins seem to think they can achieve these selfish goals, but they fail to realize, He's the fucking Creator. If He wants to manifest Himself into a living, walking, machete-wielding Jason Voorhees to get His point across, then He can do that. This is His creation. But He is a benevolent Creator and wishes to see us all become the best in which He had designed us all for. But I have played the bait for long enough. The real reason I put this information out here like this was to gauge the reaction around me, to get a better view of the battlefield and my targets. Until next time comes that we all fall. Ciao Bella. I have a question I posted that is rather important to me. I have asked countless priests and even a bishop about this and got no clarity, for some reason. The unseen hand that guides my path sometimes has led me here to find help. My problem is this: I had a near-death experience when I was younger, 14 years old, and I remember everything that happened. I was an innocent child that knew nothing of good and evil. I remember the were cherubim guiding me towards the light of the most serene peaceful bliss that cannot be described in words. They told me not to worry. All those problems in life I may have had were behind me, and I was going someplace I would never have to worry about them again. Then I saw God, not the Father but the Father who was the Son. He had bronze feet that had been made that way from the sun in the desert, and he had golden sandals, but I could not look past his knees. At that moment when I realized who he was, I had an epiphany of the stigmata. All the reasons suddenly flashed into the core of my understanding as to why he had died upon the cross. That his life's essence literally paved the road into heaven is the best I can translate it into words. Then a voice came from everywhere and from nowhere at once and said, "You are not dead. You must return." Up I shot through the skies. Streams of light like Star Wars in light speed zipped past me, and I went through this hole in the sky where my friend and grandfather were peering into. Then I shot up over my body a little, and then everything smeared into a blur as I shot up off the floor, gasping for breath to see this rather large paramedic lady squatting beside me. I was told that someone had given me rat poison and tried to kill me because my blood work came back with traces of arsenic and cyanide, and that I was clinically dead for 2 minutes and 35 seconds. From the first moment I understood why he sent me back. He wanted me to have the chance to know of good and evil and have the chance to choose salvation. However, I have come to a point where I am beginning to doubt his intentions. I was on my way to heaven. But because of his intervention I soon realized I would never be able to return to that place of peace, for soon afterward I experienced grief, loss, the betrayal of my friends and family, poverty, and it all began to lead to resentment and this unrest within my soul. I eventually found a bishop who told me when I asked him why did this happen to me, all I got was the default explanation they give when they don't have an answer: God has a plan for us all. Since that day I have not been even capable of having any thoughts of suicide as a solution to any problem, and I soon began to suspect there was something or someone withholding even my thoughts from the concept. Later I had another near-death experience, and this time I met the intangible, ever-present, all-consuming presence who is the light and source of all that is, was and has yet to be. That is he who is called I Am. I knew that it was him because in his presence every fiber of my non-corporeal being at that time said without a single doubt that is who I stood before. I had fallen into a coma for 3 days due to an injury from a car accident where my forehead met the windshield at 40 miles per hour with no seat belt on. The injury worsened later and I ended up suffering from the worst headache of my life, as that vein that swells up on the side of your temple when you get mad, ruptured. I was taken above the earth, above the solar system, past the galaxies, and I looked back and saw that all that was and all we could ever conceive to be possible in our understanding of alternate realities of the multiverse were but a space that barely took up a spot upon his ankle compared to the entire being of that which was who we call God. As I looked and saw a glimpse of the being that was the Creator, I noticed that foot and sandal from before. I stood before the gates of St. Peter, where an old man with Ben Franklin spectacles sat with an oversized golden book similar in description to that of the Sefer Raziel in front of him. He asked my name and I told him the name that you see here on this account. The gates opened up and a light shined around me. In a booming yet soothing voice from all around me again spoke and asked, if I gave you power you must promise me one thing, do not ever betray me. I looked at the light and said, I already have power, why would I want yours, let alone betray you for it? And he said, come, walk with me. Suddenly I was standing on the beach and noticed that every grain of sand was in itself, its own universe. I was standing on the near infinite possibilities that was God's template of creation, where he had played out every possible scenario that would or could ever occur, from which he perfected his grand design for creation to become that we call the multiverse. But shush, don't tell the quantum physicists that, it will ruin the surprise. There he walked forth from the waters with one foot on the land and one on the seas, and had clouds for sandals and rainbows over his feet. He had in one hand a candelabra with 12 candles, and in the other hand he had 7 pentacles, but it seemed like they were missing something. He decreased down to my height as he got closer until he was standing in front of me with eyes like that of living fire and looked like Santa Claus without the belly. He told me of my purpose, which he had specifically designed me for, that he had been waiting for this day to come. We walked and he told me of many things, and then told me that this was my God-given name and entitlement as the son of the morning star and bearer of the first dawn. My place at his left side, and his most powerful angel ever created or ever will create, was to be the vessel in which the divine spark that is his power and the Holy Spirit would work through to create existence as his hand within creation. When I asked him why creation already existed where I was, he simply said that time is an aspect within creation and holds no boundaries to that which occurs in heaven. He held out his hand and asked me to take the step towards fulfilling that which he had made me for, as apart from the divine spark I was also gifted with something no other angel has ever been given, and that was free will. Unlike the other angels, sinless in nature, they perform their duties they were designed for without question, but I was given the ability of free will to choose my path. I told him I had nothing better to do ... and well, you know the rest. My problem is this, Father. You see, I always have had trouble being able to fully trust him, and I am quick to argue against his decisions that seem hazardous or illogical, and I am quick to stand against him when he gets frustrated with mankind sometimes, and I know the reason why now. And so to fix this error within me, I fell from heaven back to earth, where I woke from my coma. I still have no vein on the side of my temple, but the MRI scans show no sign of brain damage or hemorrhage, yet when I get headaches the whole side of my temple begins to swell. I have been cast down to absolve myself of this resentment that has dwelled in me since I was young. There is no denying that it was an eon of his enema that was responsible for that, and it lingers in my heart. The suffering and sorrow I had to endure led me to what he had designed me for. Can you help me, Father, with this mistrust caused by this? The Archangel Gabriel was sent back with me and is the source of the unseen hand that presides over me and helps me along my pilgrimage to find my way back to heaven. For that resentment with Lucifer, is the source of that which became Satan, and is the core of the seed of evil within me. Once I can overcome and defeat this darkness within my heart, then Satan can be destroyed within fire of everlasting glory, and evil can be absolved from creation, for it would no longer have a place within the universe. For I am angel designed by God, and in so each of us
Finally,
who are
I have
designed
found
like
what
this
I
are a
was looking
part of
for.
him, as we are his
The
will,
best
and carry forth
depiction
that
as to
will
what
into
I truly look
creation.
like beyond
So
the
to cast
mortal
any of
vision of
us
the
out
physical
or into
world.
hell would be to
Those
cast
who
a
have
part
been
of
with
him
my
as
channel
well.
a while, I have
It's
heightened
all
your
very
ability to
technical
see
from
beyond
there
the
on, and
mortal
you
veil,
are but
the
only human
machinations
and
of
able
heaven
to
and hell,
understand so
and
much.
that which lies
Can
at the
you help
core
me
of my
understand
life
this any
force?
better through
But
some
Hollywood
point
of
I'm missing or
mankind's
something?
imagination has
Chapter
brought an
2.
easier way of
I see
revealing
now the
myself.
details of
So
what it is I
beholden
must
to you
suffer
the
on order for
unholy
me
image
to
of
become
my
who
true
I
form
am.
that is
The
not
price
far
I
from
must
the
pay
truth.
and endure for my name's sake. They are going to do it to me again. I will be crucified before the world, shamed and ridiculed, denounced and insulted. My works will be stolen and warped to become the fundamental force that leads mankind to salvation from extinction, and I shall receive no credit or acknowledgement for my efforts. Instead, I shall bear the suffering of their crimes upon me, and then tossed aside and left to perish in the hell they have designed for me to cover their shame and sins. My name will be demonized and be given only my namesake as Lucifer to keep and be acknowledged for by the world, and they shall hate me and despise me as though my name were Cain for all my days upon the earth, and even afterward those sins shall follow me into my grave and hold my afterlife with the weight of the devil to be the only crown, a crown of thorns, that I shall be chased and exorcised and cast into the fires of hell for on the day of judgment. I have always known that I would endure great suffering that would be an atrocity to any who knew the truth, but I never imagined they would go about it again this way. My theories of quantum physics, the cosmic web, the Schumann resonance that maintains our shielding from cosmic radiation and allows life to thrive here, the black hole theory of how to use photon neutrinos to X-ray map the vortex and solve the unsolvable mysteries within, the mobile black hole theory of quasar stars as the center of galaxies, their fueling of matter within the core of our galaxy to increase and decrease our galaxy's rate of speed in order to avoid colliding with Andromeda, all have been accredited to others for fame and glory, while I have been left with the legacy of the devil to inherit like a crown of thorns that will bring me nothing but suffering and sorrow. This is the price I knew I would inevitably have to bear for the title I claimed. This is the crucible in which I must apply the teachings Jesus had left me and his words of warning. I must not allow these things to turn my heart sour against my belief in God and let it become anger towards him. I must remain humble in my heart, as he had sworn that as long as I remained so he would be by my side to face any adversary as a brother in arms. I have considered something, however, taking into account what had occurred in my coma and then awakening. My works. Could I be the second Messiah, the risen Jesus returned to save the world? My works would fulfill that part and would explain why Satan works so hard against me. But they seek to crucify me once again, hopefully without the nails and wood this time.
The dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. Every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. When it is over, God will ask an angel to open the book of life to see if your name appears. The angel will look and say, "That name does not appear, Lord." And God will say, "Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." The Bible says, "And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day or night,